Virginia Rest Area Stranger. So I have a couple stories I wanted to share here, but a friend reminded me of this one tonight, and I figured it would fit perfectly here. Please excuse any formatting errors, as I am on mobile. This happened in 1999, and though I am from Virginia State, this happened many miles from my hometown, and was out close to the mountains in central Virginia. My friend, whom I will call Tay, and I gone on a little road trip to see some caverns. At 19 years old, it was the first time either of our parents had let us drive so far from home by ourselves. It was also still a little earlier than Google Maps, Siri, or Alexa, so we were relying on old school maps. There have been a few rest areas marked on the map that we already missed, and Tay really had to pee. Finally, we spotted the welcome sight of Rest Area 2 mile signs. As we pulled in, it was around 10 p.m., and there were a few cars in the parking lot area. We hopped out of the van and headed in to take care of business and get some sodas and snacks from the vending machines, as we still had another 25 minutes of riding before the town we were going to got a hotel for the night. As we were being indecisive at the vending machines, we soon noticed the cars and people we'd seen around had all left. There were a few tractor trailers humming off to the side, from what we remember, but they were far enough off to the side of the back parking lot they had never heard us scream if we had to. Then we see an older navy blue Chevy come sliding in through the entrance. At first, it's a semi-relief, but as Tay is waiting for her soda to drop, I am watching the truck. It parks right up to our van, ignoring 45 other parking spaces. I still downplay that to someone thinking safety in numbers or something, even though even back then women tried not to park next to vans in dark parking lots. But this truck had pulled up on the passenger side of our van, and as we're walking towards the van, they still haven't got out. Tay said something along the lines of, "What are they up to?" And she was the one driving, so it was I who had to squeeze between the Chevy truck and my passenger side van door, and they hadn't left a lot of room. I almost told Tay I'm not going to do it, as I ran the back of the van and squeezed through, quickly jumping up and slamming my door as if they grabbed me. Just as we lock our doors and I turn to put my seatbelt on, there is a man who has hopped out of his Chevy and is standing in the little space knocking on my rolled up window. I let out a squeal and literally locked the door in his face. He reminded me of that comedian Gallagher who used to smash watermelons, only he was wearing a dirty baseball cap. He says something along the lines of, "Sorry to scare you," and starts rambling on. Tay cracks my window a bit so we can hear what he says. "I'm lost. We're not from here," I say, "so we're not going to be much help." "Do you know if we're already past Petersburg?" he asks, ignoring my original cop-out answer. Tay and I kind of glance at each other because Petersburg is at least 80 or more miles in another direction. So I say, "I don't know, sir. Again, we're not from here. Good luck, though. There's a large map inside that may help." Again ignoring me. He suddenly reaches up and slides his finger in the crack in my window and starts yanking as if he's trying to break the glass. In fact, I don't know how it didn't give, as Tay starts wrestling with getting her keys from her lap to the ignition. We're both panicking, yelling, "Stop!" when suddenly he does just as Tay is turning over the ignition, and he says in a very, very low, growly voice, "I've drank blood fresher than yours anyway," and gives one more good yank as Tay is backing out of the parking space with his finger still in the window, as I simultaneously try to roll up my window. He did not follow us out as we fled back towards the interstate, and we didn't inform the police or our parents because we didn't want to hear any stranger danger I told you so. But creepy vampire Gallagher, let's not meet. The Mask and the Scream. So before getting into the story itself, I want to give some backstory on something that happened when I was around the age of 9. I grew up in a village called Hortlax, in the northern parts of Sweden. The road leading from my school to my home was a long one, where the local authorities had to put up lamps, which emitted a very dim blue light. It always felt like a nervous wreck when I had to walk to and from my school, both because even with the lamps the road was very dark, and also because I was bullied. So the bullies could have waited in the woods right next to the road. It was one event that I remember vividly. During the winter of 1999, I had slept poorly the night before, and the math lessons had been killing me. So when I barely felt awake, when I was beginning to walk home, the lamps were off. This isn't so weird, really, as the sensors for the lamps were pretty low. So any kid could have taken a flashlight, put it towards the sensors, and after a few seconds the lamps would shut down for a few minutes. Since I was so tired, I closed my eyes when I started walking on the road. But after coming about 20 meters on it, I opened my eyes. I noticed that the lamps were off and just stopped. I was getting nervous. I was reasoning with myself and decided to push on. I was 10, and in my youthful arrogance, I thought I reached the age where my balls should have been as hard as Duke Nukem's. Hortlax is a very quiet village, so I was barely hearing anything except the wind when this happened. To the left of the road is a very thick forest, and I could just hear this loud scream coming from it. It was very similar to the male scream you can hear in movies when someone is about to get killed or such, and is in huge pain. With the speed of Usain Bolt, I ran as fast as I could towards my home without looking back. Now, we're jumping to late autumn 2011. My parents were on a trip and asked me to move into their house just for the weeks so I can take care of the dogs. Sure thing. The thought of spending a whole week in my old room, listening to my old Mayhem CDs and eating pizza, were just too good to be true. I always walked my dog outside during midnights, because then I didn't have to take him outside again until the late morning hours. This time were no different, except I decided to walk a little bit longer. Now, if you could do me a favor, go on Google Maps and write Horlax. I decided to walk down Oxavagen, and then follow Innermarksvagen towards Norra Horlaxvagen. There was no lamps on most parts of the Innermarksvagen, so after leaving Oxavagen, I stopped, lighted a cigar, and told my dog to stay close. While walking along the road, I was just enjoying the fresh air and listening to the sounds of the leaves rustling in the trees. There's a pretty big area next to the road where they have chopped down a lot of the trees. When I came to that area, my dog stopped and started barking towards the area I described. When I looked towards the area, I could see the silhouette of a person. The only visible part were the hands. I said, "What the fuck?" with a pretty loud voice. The person turned towards me. If I didn't know better, I could have sworn that only the head and hands turned, as I didn't see any movements at all on the rest of the body. A white mask. The guy was wearing a white mask with a slit for each of his eyes. My dog started whimpering. The guy raised his right hand with all of his fingers pointing towards me and screamed. It sounded like the exact same scream I had heard as a kid walking home from school. What must have been survival instincts kicked in, and I just started running. When I ran for 20 meters or so, I stopped to see if my dog was still with me, which he was, and then looked towards the spot the guy had stood. He wasn't there anymore. He had moved to a spot where I stood, now with his hands down, but the mask still towards me. I started running again till I got to Norra Horlaxvagen. I'd never been so scared before. When I stopped, I was crying and the whole body was shaking. I walked home. I haven't told anyone about this encounter. Why? First of all, I knew that the police wouldn't have done anything, as the guy didn't really commit a crime at all, and secondly, because I've just honestly been trying to forget about the whole entire situation. I still feel extremely anxious when I think of it. About 8 kilometers away is a place called Jupviken. People have actually reported very similar things. I haven't heard anyone actually talking about these events though. Only read about it in the newspaper sometimes. Sorry for any poor grammars and stuff, but English is my second language. I just feel like writing about this could maybe help me process this whole thing. I was almost taken as a 1-year-old. My mother told me this story over the years, and this event took place when I was too young to remember it myself, which is the most frightening thought that comes to mind if you really think about it. That something almost happened to you when you were too little to know about it, and it could have cost you your whole entire life. When I was a 1-year-old in 1999, my mom was shopping at an Ultra Foods grocery store by our house. She had to run in to get dinner for the night, and she took me with her into the store and put me into those small front seats that all shopping carts have, still in my baby seat. She began shopping when suddenly she noticed this man walking around the aisles, occasionally in the store. The funny thing was, he looked completely normal and not your average creeper look. He did not look suspicious, hobo-like, or anything like that. In fact, she remembered him wearing a casual dress suit without a tie, as if he were expected to be somewhere formal. He smiled at her a couple times, and she did not pay any attention to him at first, and just smiled back. But then, when she was still shopping around minutes later, he kept following her. This took place quite a few times. When she would be moving items on a shelf to browse, he seemed to be doing the same thing in a nearby aisle, seeming to trail behind her or keep a distant eye on her. This shook her up a little bit, but regardless, she went along her way and went to the checkout lines to finish and pay. The man didn't purchase anything, and instead walked out the exit door of the store, which gave my mom relief. But it didn't last long. After she was done paying and was pushing me in the cart to her car, she loaded up the trunk with the groceries. She then got shocked when she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turns around, and again, there's Mr. Familiar himself. It made her nervous at this point, as if the situation wasn't already creepy enough. The man didn't greet her, no hello or anything like that. He simply said, "Do you need help putting her in the car?" Of course, my mom wasn't that dense and knew that this question was definitely off-putting and very, very strange. She tried to be as polite as she could to the man and replied, "No thank you, sir." And that was all it took for him to give my mom a glare before walking off. To this day, when my mom tells me this situation, I also find that question he asked very, very strange. Why would a random stranger want to offer to put a baby in their mother's car when the mother could easily do it herself? It also chills me to the core that if my mom somehow let him do it, and would have took off with me and ran, that I would pretty much be done, because my mom could never outrun him, and there were no commonly used cell phones at that time. My mom did not even have one, to be honest. And if that man taking me were in fact to happen, I could have been held captive for years, abused, raped, or even dead by now, not even being able to write this. The Ultra Foods my mom had this encounter happen is gone now, and what remains of that place is only the memory of what could have been my disappearance. It's still in that location by our house, left standing and abandoned. I get chills every time I look at it, knowing that it could have been taken in that exact abandoned parking lot. Mothers out there, definitely trust your instinct for your kids like my mom had, especially in today's world. Just one decision for them can change your life when they can't even decide for themselves. And as for you, creepy supermarket stalker and possibly baby captor, let's never meet. He shushed them. This did not happen directly to me, though I was in the home when it happened. The witness to all this is my older sister, Tori. Around 1999, my sister and her friend Chrissy were 16 years old, and Chrissy had just gotten her license. They had been out joyriding in Chrissy's DeVille. We lived in a new development in a pretty rural area, so there wasn't much else to do for fun. When they got back to our neighborhood, it was already dark outside. Chrissy lived about half a block away, and so she was going to drop Tori off before heading home. The house we lived in had a large patio extended from the front of the house, with trees along either side blocking the view of the driveway. Chrissy stopped the car in front of the driveway, and Tori was about to get out of the car when Chrissy grabbed her arm. Tori looked back and saw a look of fear on Chrissy's face. She turned back towards the house to see what caused this reaction and saw a figure crouched in the shadows between the parked cars. Looking back at them was a man in all black. He wore a black long-sleeve shirt, black pants, and most frighteningly, a black ski mask. He was also completely barefoot. As he made eye contact with the girls, he raised his fingers to his lips, as if to gesture a shut. Tori slammed the door shut and they raced to Chrissy's house, where her father called the police and my father. No trace of the man was ever found. What really frightens me about this occurrence is that my parents, myself, and my younger sister were all at home at the time. I don't know if this man had any weapons or if he had moved along when he realized the house was occupied, but I'm glad my sister came home when she did. And creepy barefoot shushing man. Let's not meet.